Though it doesn't feel like it where I live, it's finally fall. That means the leaves are changing colors and falling off the trees, the air is supposed to be getting cooler, and it is pumpkin spice all the things. So when we... Wait, what is Odie eating? Are those? Yep, those are acorns. Huh, wonder if those are bad for him. Are acorns bad for dogs? Let's investigate. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Holmes and welcome to another episode of Pet Doc Sherlock, where we help people solve the mysteries of pets. Now, there are oak trees all over the country, and there's a ton of them in the southeast where I live, and they're always dropping their leaves and dropping their acorns, and if you have a dog that likes to roam around and put just about anything in his or her mouth, you know that they might pick up a few of those leaves and a few of those acorns. And while squirrels love acorns, and they don't cause much of a problem for them, it turns out acorns can be a bit of an issue for dogs if they eat enough of them. So we're going to take a look at why, what kinds of problems can arise, and then what we can do to try to prevent it from being a problem for our furry friends. So the first thing is acorns contain an acid called tannic acid. We think that that's the part of acorns and oak leaves as well that cause issues within our dogs. The problem is we don't know how many acorns or how many leaves each dog needs to eat in order for it to cause a problem. It would make sense that a little tiny Chihuahua probably needs to eat less of them than a big old German Shepherd. If a Chihuahua gets hold of a few, probably going to cause a problem. If a German Shepherd gets a hold of a few, may not cause an issue. But really, we need to just kind of limit the risk for any dog, because those tannins, that tannic acid, gets into their system and can cause a few different problems. One is gastritis, the other is an intestinal obstruction, and the other is actually, it can cause kidney disease. So in addition to the acorns, its leaves of the oak tree can contain tannins as well. And they found that green acorns or really young leaves of the tree are the ones that contain the most. So definitely steer your dog away from those. But let's look at these issues that arise and why they arise. So the first is gastritis. It's a technical term to mean inflammation of the stomach. Now, in layman's terms, that's also your stomach's ticked off and it gets really thick, and anything that comes into it, it says, you know what, I ain't dealing with that, that's coming back out. And so the first thing you'll definitely see is vomiting if your dog has gastritis. Now, acorns might cause just a little bit of vomiting once or twice, and then your dog feels just fine, or your dog will all of a sudden have extensive vomiting for a long period of time and maybe even a few days. And if their stomach gets inflamed enough, it can lead to inflammation throughout the rest of the GI tract, and they'll develop something called HGE. Big long word, hemorrhagic gastroenteritis. This basically means their entire GI tract gets super inflamed, super angry, and it leaks a little bit of blood into the middle of the intestines, and you'll see bloody vomit and bloody diarrhea. That will severely dehydrate your dog, and your dog needs to be taken to the vet and put on IV fluids and kept there probably for a couple days. So again, your dog may just throw up a couple times due to those acorns, or it may end up in the hospital for a few days. So that's gastritis. The other thing that acorns can cause is an intestinal obstruction. Again, this goes back to the size of the dog. A larger dog can probably pass an acorn through its intestinal tract just fine. But a real small Chihuahua, Yorkie, things along those lines, their intestinal tract is really, really little. And so an acorn's moving along, hits a spot that's too narrow, and stops. What we see when an animal, whether it be a cat, dog, or anything else, has an intestinal obstruction is they are profusely vomiting most of the time because their intestines are trying to send that object back up. They're trying to get it out. It quit moving this way, so now we're trying to send it that way. The other thing is, even if your dog has an appetite and tries to eat or drink, they usually vomit what they eat or drink right back up pretty quickly. They'll look like they generally feel terrible, and their stomach usually hurts when you touch them there or try to pick them up. If you see that your dog has vomited a bunch of times in a short period of time, or your dog's been vomiting for a couple of days, it's time to go to the vet. And they'll probably take an x-ray and see if anything's stuck in there. And acorns could be one of those things they find. Now, the third thing is a little less common, but it's still a possibility. It just depends on the dog. We don't know why it happens, and we don't know which dogs will be affected and which won't. And that's kidney disease. There's something about the tannic acid that gets into their bloodstream, and then as the kidneys are trying to filter it out, they're damaged. And so you may not see results of this until well after they've eaten those acorns, because once the kidneys are damaged, you start seeing things like vomiting. They'll drink a little bit more than they did before. They'll be urinating a lot more than they did before. And you may notice a change to the color of their urine. So this goes back to a point that I think is kind of important for pet parents to know, is occasionally walk your dog or go outside with them when they use the bathroom. If you have a fenced-in yard and you just let them out there every time, you may not catch if they have diarrhea, and you may not catch if their urine changes. And that's what we're looking for with kidney disease. If they had, slightly yellow urine and then all of a sudden it takes a really dark color, or you see blood in it, then you know there's a problem. And the only way to know if your dog has a kidney issue due to the acorns is if your vet runs blood work, because they're going to look for an increase in some of those enzymes, and then they're going to need to put them on fluids to help flush those out through the kidneys and try to support the kidneys moving forward. So those are the main issues we see with ingesting acorns. And now we're going to take a little look at how we can prevent this from happening to begin with. We now know acorns are bad, at least for your dog to eat, and to eat a lot of them. So how can we prevent them from having access to that many acorns? And the first is simply, when your dog is outside, watch them. If they're trying to eat acorns, you now know, okay, I either need to try to remove as many acorns as I can, which if you have as many oak trees as we do around here is almost impossible, or when my dog's outside, I need to walk them on a leash so I can make sure they're not getting into anything that I wouldn't want them to. The other thing to think about is if you have oak trees that are dropping acorns in one part of your yard but not another, then maybe fence those off with a temporary fence. Prevent your dog from getting over there. Or fence a little kind of pen in the middle of the yard where your dog can go and be outside and spend some time away from those trees. The other thing to think about is if there's any standing water in your yard that oak leaves and acorns have gotten into, your dog may get thirsty while he's out there and go over there to take a drink. That's kind of like oak tea. The leaves have been in there, they've saturated the water along with the acorns, and so you can get a pretty high concentration of those tannic acids in that water. So make sure there's not any puddles with a bunch of oak leaves and acorns in it, and you should be pretty well set. So I hope this information's been helpful. I learned a lot in researching this, and will keep my dog away from acorns as much as I can. Again, we don't know how many acorns it takes to cause a problem in your dog, but it's just a best practice and a good idea to keep them away from the acorns as much as you can. Again, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and keep an eye out for more content that we have coming out on a regular basis. Thanks again, and as always, keep your pets happy and healthy.